Most people reduce Albert Camus to a single sentence. Life is meaningless, but just don't care. Just give up, basically. That's what people want you to do. You'll see quotes like, "We must imagine Sisyphus happy," thrown around online as if, well, Camus' entire philosophy was just a clever way of saying it is what it is. But Camus was not shallow, no. He spent his entire career trying to answer a serious question. If life has no ultimate meaning, how should we live? And more importantly, how should we treat each other in a world where there is no rules? Camus begins with this one fundamental conflict. This is what he calls the absurd, the confrontation between humans, desire, and the silence of the world. But Camus doesn't think the absurd leads to despair or suicide. Instead, he says we must revolt against it. Live without illusion. Reject false hope. Accept meaningless and still go on. This becomes the foundation of the myth of Sisyphus. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's actually my thumbnail, by the way. Where Camus imagines the tragic person pushing his rock up a hill for all eternity and says, we must imagine Sisyphus happy because the absurd hero doesn't give in. He sees the truth and still chooses life. In his early work, Camus presents characters who are lucid, detached, and radically free. Maso from The Stranger is emotionally indifferent, even to his own mother's death, and refuses to lie about feelings what he doesn't feel. Caligula, in the play of the same name, realizes that if life is meaningless, then anything is permitted. So he becomes cruel, insisting on truth at the cost of humanity. These are solitary absurdists. They stand alone against the world and its illusions. And while they may be free, they are also dangerous. This is Camus' first great tension. If life has no meaning, what stops someone like Caligula from doing whatever he wants, even if it destroys others? Camus eventually realizes that solitary rebellion is not enough. In The Plague, the city of Oran is struck by an epidemic, and Camus makes the plague a metaphor for the absurd itself. Senseless suffering, random death, and human helplessness. But here's what's different. The people don't give in. They resist. Together, doctors, volunteers, friends fight a battle that they knew they could not win. And even though they thought they are still powerless, something changes. When the characters are isolated, they despair. But when they act in solitary, they begin to find meaning. Not in victory, but in companionship. One of the most moving scenes in The Plague is when Dr. Rinks shares a quiet evening with his friend Teru. They drink, they talk, and they silently understand. They are on the same side, not against death, but against giving up. This, Camus suggests, is the beginning of a different kind of absurd hero. One who finds dignity, not in solitude, but in shared resistance. In The Rebel, Camus developed this further. How can we care about justice or protect others in a meaningless world? Camus answered, because we are all absurd together. We are all crying out for meaning in a universe that offers none. And this shared condition gives us common ground. This doesn't come from religion, ideologies, or utopian dreams. It comes from rare recognition that every person you meet is fighting the same existential battle you are. From this, Camus builds an ethic of universal solidarity. Not because it's right, but because it's human. He argues that to treat someone as less than human, whether through violence, oppression, or hatred, is to undermine the only thing that brings us together, that binds us together, right? Camus' major philosophy lives in a tension. On one hand, the absurd frees us. If nothing matters, we are radically open to create our own meaning. But that same freedom can be used to justify cruelty. After all, if everything is meaningless, why not dominate others? I mean, after all, we are animals who dominate every species that comes around us. We are on the top of the food chain, right? So why don't we just dominate everyone? Well, he has an answer for this. Freedom must be tempered by empathy. Empathy is what makes us not dominate, not impose morality, but solidarity born from shared suffering. He criticizes ideologies that promise utopia later at the cost of cruelty now, like the totalitarian regions he lived through. Camus sees these as dangerous illusions. We should never sacrifice a human being for a future dream. Instead, we must protect the fragile bond of our common absurdity. By the time he writes The Rebel, Camus is clearly dissing himself. Caligula. He sees now that absurdism, taken only as a personal awareness, can become narcissistic, even violent. Caligula isn't a true absurd hero. He's someone who fails to fully understand the absurd because he thinks it gives him permission to harm. Camus corrects this by insisting that a proper response to the absurd isn't detached, it's engagement, a recognition that our shared suffering calls us to care, not to conquer. Imagine Sisyphus is happy isn't a final answer. It's a daily struggle. Camus doesn't give us easy solutions. He gives us a task to live in full awareness of life absurdity, to reject despair, and to choose over and over again to stand with others instead of against them. This is not passive nihilism. It is an active, ongoing rebellion, not just against the meaningless of the universe, but against the dehumanization of those within it. Albert Camus doesn't give us a doctrine or a system. He gives us a challenge to face absurd honestly and still choose to live and to love. If religion, universalism, tells us we are all children of God, Camus' absurdist humanism tells us we are victims of the absurd, and that is enough to unite us. We are victims of the absurd, and that is enough to unite us. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what else you would like to hear next. And I hope you all have a great day.